Hello and welcome, Mindsetters. You're on Learn Extra Live. Remember, today is Life Science Grade 11s, and we are doing animal diversity with Ilsa. How are you, Ilsa?
Good, and you?
Good, thank you.
That's
Please let us
wonderful.
know what we'll be doing today.
Yes, good afternoon, Grade 11 Mindsetters. Today we are going to do animal diversity. We're going to look at specifically at the 6 different phyla of
Okay.
animals. Yes,
Okay,
that's what we're
awesome.
going to do.
Okay, awesome. You can walk over
Thank
to
you.
your
Thanks
board.
so much.
You guys do know how to get hold of us. We're on facebook.com/Learn Extra, and our Twitter handle is @Learn Extra. You can ask us any questions that you wish to ask on animal diversity, and any comments perhaps, or answer any questions or anything that's been bugging you. You know how we're here for your every need. So please, let's be interactive today and be on our best awareness, because it is going to be a really exciting show. And I know all of you came rushing back from school just to see Ilsa and animal diversity. Over to you, Ilsa.
Thanks, Katlego. Good afternoon, Grade 11s once again. What I would like you to do is I would like to go and get a piece of paper and a pen and a pencil and a ruler, because you are going to be actively involved in my lesson today. So please be ready. So when I say to you start doing this activity, I would like you to be involved with my lesson. All right, let's start. We're going to look, as I said now, at animal diversity, and we are going to first of all look at the classification once again. I know I did this last week, but I think it's necessary to just summarize the classification. Now remember, we did Monera, and under Monera, oops, I need a pen for this. All right, under Monera, we have done bacteria. All right. Then we looked at the Protista, which was all the little unicellular animals and unicellular plants. Right, and then we looked at the group of fungi. We did bread mold mainly under the fungi, which were all plant-like without chlorophyll. So these are plants without chlorophyll. Then we looked at the whole group of plantae. If you can remember what we did there, we started off with the moss plants, which was Bryophyta. We did the ferns, which was Pteridophyta. We did Gymnospermae, which was the Gymnospermae, which was the pine tree, and then we did the Angiospermae, which was the flowering plants. All right, and today we are going to focus on the group of Animalia. First of all, we have to look at the characteristics of animals and see why does this group of animals belong to the group or to the kingdom Animalia. Now, first of all, they have the features of living things. Now, in grade 8 already, you have actually in primary school, I think you've learned about this, that these characteristics are things like animals can breathe, they can reproduce. All right, they can feed, which means that they're actually eating food. They are sensitive to the environment, which means that they react to the environment. Can you think of some more? All right, so they can move. All right, they can move. So those are mainly the different characteristics that belong to this group that makes them alive, this group of animals. Right, they are eukaryotes. Can you remember this term? That means that there is a true nucleus. All right, true nucleus. They are heterotrophs, opposite to plants. If you can remember, what was the term we used for plants? Autotrophic, which means that they can make their own food. All right, this is heterotrophs, which means they cannot make their own food, not make food. Okay, and that means that they have to feed or eat, so we're going to say that they have to consume food, therefore they are consumers. They are multicellular. Now these multicellular organisms are classified into the group of animals because they have now got different tissues that group together, and that will form also different organs. Right. Then they lack cell walls, which means that they are animal-like. Cell walls belong to plants, as you can remember the plant cell walls. And then in the animals, we have mainly structural proteins that hold together and support cells, together with various skeletons. So animals have got various types of skeletons, and then they also have got most excitable cells. Now you're going to say, now what is that? That is mainly nerve cells. All right, so they have nerve cells, they have got nerve tissue, they have some kind of brain tissue, and also that they can obtain and integrate information and respond, which means that they have got some kind of muscle tissue that they can respond to their environment. And then animals also, as we know, reproduce sexually, and some animals can also reproduce asexually. All right, guys, those are all the characteristics of the animals, and that's why they're placed under the group of, or the kingdom of Animalia, and not under the group of Plantae. Make sure you know these characteristics, because teachers love asking this question. Right, let's move on. What we are going to look at in this section, we're going to discuss these 6 phyla. Now, there are many other phyla as well than these 6, but these are the 6 phyla that you have to know for examination purposes. Now, if you look at these names, you're going to say, oh my goodness, they are difficult. Okay, for me also, it's quite difficult to pronounce them. It's not only about how to pronounce them, it's how you're going to spell them. So as you write them down, you're going to pronounce them to yourselves, all right? And what a good way is maybe to break it down into little syllabi so that you can learn how to spell them. So the first phylum is going to be the phylum Pyrophera. Second phylum is the Cnidaria. Then we have the Platyhelminthes, the Annelida, the Arthropoda, and the Chordata. Now, those are the 6 phyla, and I'm going to elaborate on each of those phylums a little bit later on. Make sure that you know those phylums, because those are the 6 phyla that you're going to have to write down into your table that I'm going to give you as an activity. All right. Now, as we said, now all the characteristics of animals, okay, are now classified into 2 groups. Because of their characteristics, we're going to put these animals into 2 groups. We're going to put them under invertebrates, and all these animals do not have a backbone. Now, around about 95% of all our animals, that is a huge amount. Now, these animals, you don't even know about them. You don't even know they exist. You just know maybe your dog and your cat. Now, where do they belong? They belong to the group of vertebrates, which is only 5% of our animals that do have a backbone. All right, so those are our 2 main groups in which we're going to classify the animals, the invertebrates and the vertebrates. Now, in your table, I'll keep on talking about your table, but you're going to see what I've got an example for you of the table, and I know that they are placing the table onto Facebook. So if you're going onto Facebook, you will see there is a copy of the table, and I'm going to show you the table as well. So please go to your Facebook page and see if you can find this table and start to fill it in as I'm talking. All right. And what you're going to fill in onto the table is going to be these aspects. We're going to look at each of those phyla of animals. We're going to look at the type of symmetry. We're going to look at the number of tissue layers. We're going to look at the presence or absence of a phylum. We're going to look at the presence or absence of a through gut. So those are going to be the different aspects that we're going to study under each of these phyla. And that is what your table is going to look like. Now, this is a very, very good way of summarizing this whole section on the animals. So I would like you to roughly copy down this table. And as I said, if you don't have the Facebook page, you can, or if you do have Facebook page, please go and look for this table. And as I said, you can now draw up a rough table. These are your animal groups. Okay, these are the 6 different phyla: Porifera, Cnidaria, Platyhelminthes, the Annelida, Arthropoda, and the Chordata. All right, so these are our 6 phyla. And I hope you've copied this down already. Okay, in the first column, we're going to have the symmetry. Then we're going to have the number of tissue layers, whether there's a phylum or not, a through gut, and a skeleton. So I'm going to talk about each of these phyla. I'm going to talk about each of these aspects, see how many of these empty spaces you can fill in, and at the end, I'm going to give you the copy. I'm going to show you all these answers, and then it's very exciting that you can go and check and see how many of the answers you were able to fill in and how many you have correct yourself. All right, so let's move on to now our first aspect, and that is symmetry. Now, what is symmetry? If I have to give a definition of symmetry, that's the way in which all the body parts of an animal, is arranged. All right? And it's normally arranged around a specific point or an axis, a central axis. So that will be a definition of a symmetry. Body parts of animal is arranged the way in which they are, or you can say body parts of animal, how they are arranged or is arranged around a point. Now there's 3 types of symmetry: asymmetry, radial symmetry, and bilateral symmetry. Asymmetry, always when you see that letter A, that actually means none. Okay, so that means there's no symmetry. And now if you take, I'm going to use an example of an animal you studied in this year. If you can remember the little amoeba. All right, like a little unicellular animal, remember? It's got all these little pseudopodia or false feet. Now if you have to cut that animal into 2 halves, you can't, all right? You have to make a cut there. There's not 2 similar halves. So this animal is asymmetrical. Let's look at the next one, which is radial symmetrical. The body can be divided into 2 identical, we can also say 2 mirror images. All right, so the one half is going to look like the other half along any, I think emphasis is on that word, any 2D plane along the central axis. Now, I'm going to talk about a little animal later on called the hydra, which looks like that, something like that, with tentacles, all right? Now, if I cut that animal, you're going to see from the top, the animal's going to look like this. It's got a central axis in the middle, and it's got all these tentacles around. Now, if you have to cut this animal into 2 identical halves, you can do it along that plane, okay? You can do it along that plane. Along that plane, each time you're going to get 2 identical halves. So that's got to do with radial symmetry. Think of a radius of a circle. Okay, radial symmetry. The other one is bilateral symmetry. Bilateral, what does the word mean? If you look at the word bi, it means 2. Lateral means 2 sides. Okay, the body can be divided into 2 identical halves once again, but only in one 2D plane. Now I've got a diagram here to show you the 2 symmetries. Okay, first of all, that's the radial symmetry as I explained to you now. There's the central axis in the middle. There's the central axis, or the point. This reminds me of if you have a birthday cake. I'm sure you all have had a birthday cake sometime in your life where you had to cut the cake into exact halves to give each of your party friends exact part, all right? So what you had to do is cut the cake like that, once like that, again and again and again. Each time you're going to have the exact same half. So that is called radial. Think of a circle, and the radius of a circle. So that's radial symmetrical. All right. Now, if we look at the bilateral symmetrical one, there's a diagram of this animal, little tortoise, I think it is, or little turtle. If you look at the words dorsal, ventral, what does dorsal mean? It means there's a definite top, there's a definite bottom, part. There's a posterior, which is a back part, and there is an anterior, which is the front. I think these words are very important that you can remember these words: dorsal, ventral, anterior, posterior. Now, if you cut this animal, you can only cut it along one plane, which is along there. All right? Only one plane. You can't cut it there and there and there. You can only do one 2D plane, and you're going to get two identical halves. All right. Now, we're moving on to the next aspect, and we are going to look at the germ layers. Now, not germ like you know germs. I'm going to replace that word with a word tissue layers, germ or tissue layers. Now, where do these layers come from? I want to just quickly explain this. If you think of fertilization, all right, what happens after fertilization? We're going to have a zygote. Remember, we had this when we did the plants as well. We have a zygote. After zygote, we have an embryo. There are other stages as well, but the embryo is important, and that's going to develop into embryonic layers or tissue layers. All right, so during the development of animals, this is what's going to happen. Fertilization, zygote, embryo, embryonic layers, and these are the three embryonic layers. Right, first of all, ectoderm means outside. Ecto means outside. Meso means middle, and endo means inside. So those three layers are the three tissue layers. Now, animals with two, all right, let's take 1 and 3. Animals with those two layers, we're going to call that animal, we're going to say the animal is diploblastic. Okay, you have to know that terminology. Diploblastic. Diplo, di comes from two, blastic comes from layers, layers of cells. So animals with an ecto and the endoderm are diploblastic. Now, I'm sure you can now think of the term we're going to use if an animal's consists of 3 layers of cells. Yes? Triploblastic. So now, if they have an ectoderm, a mesoderm, and an endoderm, which means they have 3 layers, all 3 layers are present, we're going to use the term triploblastic. These are 2 very, very important words, triplo and diploblastic, that you have to understand. So what's the importance of these 3 germ or tissue layers? Now, during this embryonic development from those layers, what developed from each layer as the embryo grows into an animal or into a human being? Okay, what happens? From the ectoderm, mainly what develops from that layer of cell is that forms mainly the skin. The mesoderm, the middle layer, all right, middle, forms the muscle tissue, mainly the muscles. There are other organs as well, but mainly those organs. The endoderm, that's in the inner layer, will form the digestive tract. Right, so the animals that we're going to do, that we're going to study from the simple organisms to the most complex organisms, is going to show the change from tissues into layers and into complex organs. All right. This diagram is just showing what I've just explained to you now about the mesoderm. Okay, I'm going to come back to this diagram actually later on, because we're going to talk about the phylum, we're going to talk about the mesoderm in a bit more detail.
Before you carry on, Elsa, would you
Yes.
like to take a quick break?
Yes, I think we can do that.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you, Katlego.
So let's take a break, guys. As you know, there is the table. Let's make that our challenge. I know that you guys love challenge questions. So make that your challenge question. Jot it down on a piece of paper, fill the table in, and we'll see who fills in the most. I mean, I know that you won't be able to write it down, but if you can take a picture of it and then send it to us on Facebook, that would be fantastic. See you right after this.